Welcome back to Marketing Actively. Today I have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, Gary Fox, the host of the Entrepreneur Experiment podcast. Well, I'll get you to introduce yourself properly in a second. But Gary is someone that I've got to know quite well over the last couple of years, and I think is quite an applicable guest for this podcast. So very, very happy to have you down, Gary. Thanks for coming down.
You're very welcome. The HQ is slick.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We put a lot of work into it.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's class. And thank you for inviting me. It's really nice to come up here and sit down.
Nice to
really
to
good
get
chat. I don't know what we're going to talk about. So it's
I
really
don't know
interesting.
either. Like every other chat we have, it just rambles, doesn't it?
I'll do.
So yeah, you're the pro, the podcast pro. So I could ask you for tips, but I'm not going to put you on the spot like that. So
People always ask, what's your favorite episode? And I can never answer because they're all my favorites.
oh, it's like, what's your favorite child?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to start by thanking you for, and without getting to like blowing smoke up you.
I like where this is going already.
The last few years, since we've kind of got to know each other a little bit, and I've interacted with, say, the Entrepreneur Experiment group and got in on, say, accountability piece and some challenges you've done. For me personally, it's changed my perspective a lot. It's done a lot for me in business and personally. And firstly, my YouTube channel and what I've done there probably wouldn't have happened without the accountability of sitting down with the group one morning and saying that I was going to do it. And then you're all sitting down and going, "Hey, Chris, we're still waiting on this video." So that wouldn't happen without it. And that's 46 weeks deep now. So
Yes.
thanks for that. Just the opening the door to kind of speaking to other people in business and entrepreneurs, and it honestly has made a massive difference to me. So that's all the emotional.
Thank you so much. Like, it's
appreciative
beautiful
stuff
to
out
hear
of it.
because like when you do a pod or content, it's all one way a lot of the time
Mhm.
because there's no real like conversation like this. That's why it's so cool to hear that. And I was coming up here this morning, I was on the phone to a mutual friend of ours, and I was like, I love Chris for a few different reasons, but he just does the work. You're one of the people since the start of the pod, you always show up and
Mhm.
you're always doing the work. Like a lot of people like do the work for like a month and then drop off. Whereas you've done the work consistently over years. So thank you for saying that. That's
Honestly,
huge.
I think the accountability piece of the group and getting used to making myself accountable, saying I'm going to do something, and then others kind of holding me to account to actually do that thing, that has helped me. Although like inherently I would have, like, just being inherently ambitious, I probably would have done that anyway, but having those people there to kind of hold me to account has made a big difference. So yeah, thanks for that.
Brilliant, thank you. It's and it's all an experiment. Like the clue is in the name. It is all an experiment for me trying to figure out what works. And a big part of the reason I started the pod was that because it was lonely is kind of thrown around too much, but it was just didn't know where I was going. I didn't know. I needed more mentors and needed more people around me, and I needed stuff like this to go. What are other people doing? Because you kind of there's a big veneer around a lot of people. We all put up a veneer as to what we look like on the outside on Instagram and LinkedIn. I was joking with someone yesterday. They're like, "Oh, I'm having a real tough time at the minute." I was like, "Look, on LinkedIn you're flying. That's all that really matters, right?" I was joking but serious in the fact that like it's so hard to know if you just viewed the world. If we were working independently and you just viewed the world as Instagram and LinkedIn, you think everyone else is so far ahead of you.
Yeah.
And that's why I love doing these chats. I love doing the podcast. But then when you get in a room with like 10, 12 people and just are open and just go, this is really hard because I can't do this.
It's a trap I've fallen into a lot of looking at people online. Everyone does, and saying, "Oh, Jesus, they're doing so well." And then off the back of that, I suppose, is the guests you've had in your podcast, the content that you've kind of pulled out of them, the conversations that you've pulled out of them, the stories, and seeing a business. Like you've had a lot of guests on your podcast where I would have been maybe following them online for a while or keeping an eye on the business itself and maybe not knowing them personally or anything like that, but seeing that how well they seem to be doing on the outside, and then you actually sit down with them for an hour and a half and you hear their story and what has gone into building that business. It's been a real motivating factor for me that even when you have bad days, it's still okay. Keep going, get up again
Big
the next
thing
day.
I
And keep
believe is
going.
you have to see it to be it.
Yeah.
You really have to see it to be it. I think that is fundamental, especially in Ireland, because a lot of people are very secretive about things like money and work and business, and it all has to look great, and don't talk about the family business kind of stuff. Like real old school stuff. Like whereas modern entrepreneurs are very frank and very open about like how tough it can be, but we always have to push back against that Irish stereotype of like being closed and kind of like keeping it all yourself.
Yeah, it is just an inherent trait that we all have, isn't it?
It's fear as well, right?
Yeah.
You're afraid to be too vulnerable. You're afraid to, well, there's a trend on TikTok, say the weird thing. You're afraid to say the vulnerable thing because you might think it's weakness, or people might perceive it as, oh, your clients are watching or your staff are watching. And that was a big actually challenge I had at the start of the podcast, is that I started and then realized, geez, how much can I share?
Yeah.
And it's only becoming more comfortable, I think, with myself internally, that I've overcome that. Like at the start, I was very nervous and cautious about what I'd say or what I'd actually reveal. Let's
go back to the start a little bit, just to give people a bit more context. So when you did start the podcast, you had another business. Give us the 30-second elevator pitch actually of who Gary Fox is and where he came from and how you got to where you are.
Oh wow, I was back in UL the other day. That's where I got my degree. Initially I was having like a this is your life moment. It was like bizarre. It was really cool actually, because I'm very much not someone who looks back, probably to my detriment a little bit at times, because I don't really celebrate stuff, but I went back and I was like, oh wow, UL is amazing. It was a big part of my journey. I'd never gone back and looked around. So I was running Host Builders, which was an Airbnb management business. And what that was is that we had 75 properties under management in Dublin. We'd manage the property for the landlord and put them all on Airbnb. So at the time, it was like I built it up from nothing. I built it up from 500 quid to 500 grand a year turnover, all bootstrapped, all on my own. I had 2 great people that worked with me, but I built it all on my own. And that's why I was starting to do the podcast, because I was like, number one, I knew the business always had a shelf life, because you're always building on someone else's platform. I knew short-term lettings would have a shelf life to a point, and I always knew it was always going to be a vehicle to something else in my gut. I never knew what, but I always knew it was going to be something else. So I started doing the podcast to meet other business people, to understand more about what was possible.
Yeah, it's like, I think the Host Builders as a business seemed like a great business, but then inherently it does have that issue or potential issue of, well, we all know what happened in 2020, and that was another
It was
factor,
until it wasn't.
Exactly.
And I always knew, hindsight 2020, I always knew, but I always had a feeling that there was an inherent weakness. Like we know as business people never have a single point of failure. My single point of failure was I was only working on Airbnb. I was only doing short-term lettings, and I had started to tweak it a little bit, moving into like corporates and 14-day lettings. But also Dublin property and Irish property is a funny business, like inherently weird and quirky. And there's a lot of regulation. Like when I started that, literally I was the poster child for innovation. I was on every single media. I was on Irish Times, Today FM, Business Post. Oh, this crazy new idea, brilliant. Airbnb helps people share their home, pay their mortgage, helps people discover Dublin. And that was the narrative for about 3-4 years. And then it wasn't. So you've always got to be shifting. You've always got to be looking at what's coming down the road. And then obviously the COVID happened.
Yeah, that threw you off then. But you had already started the podcast, so it was almost like you had foreseen something coming. And
I'd love to say that. Well, I had foreseen there always would be something next.
Always a potential issue.
I always knew Host Builders was never going to be the one, right? I knew it was always going to be a vehicle to something else. So from that point, I kind of knew that, right, I need to keep moving, move forward, move, because you can't, I believe you only have 2 gears in life, you're forward or you're back. I don't believe you can stay the same.
Yeah, if you're standing still, you're going backwards, really.
100%. You don't realize it at the time, but you are going backwards.
Yeah. It's, I suppose, a different journey that you've gone on in comparison to a lot of people, in terms of how you've transitioned from that end of running a business to running a podcast, which probably a lot of people look at and go, how's that a business?
So funny.
Yeah, and now it's kind of flipped to like, it's a media business essentially now is what it is.
So funny you say that. This year I rebranded it in my head. It's not a podcast, it's a media business. Because I was like, you need to take yourself a bit more seriously. And people kept asking that question. And I'm like, I know it's coming from a place of curiosity, but people like, it's funny, like people kind of go, now tell me this now. You're like, oh.
It's another one of those old Irish traits of,
it really is. I had a call
what's
with a guy,
that lad up to?
I had a call with a guy last Friday, and he reached out to me to work together, and every single sentence started with, now tell me this now. For about 3 minutes until I started flipping it back and didn't realize I was taking the mickey a little bit, going, now tell me this now, Eamon. How do you make money from this events business?
Yeah.
Like, it's just bizarre. Look, it's kind of it's such a new medium, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't really understand the power. And I think you're one of the few people I've seen who've kind of seen what's coming next.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing is moving from push to pull.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be like bombarding people anymore with like ads. We already seen this with influencers, and they get a bad rep or whatever. But that's pull. People are pulled towards them, and then they're pulled towards the products and the companies that they work with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still advertising and marketing, but it's just in a whole different way.
It's a different angle on it. Like we see it with the creative that works in ads now. The creative that works in ads is a style of creative that seems organic. Like there's a lot of ad content now that is set up to seem like it's coming from a podcast, or that's essentially someone filming in their kitchen with their phone, but then they turn it into, I'm not going to call it a high production ad, but they add kind of production pieces to it, they add sound effects to it, but it still looks like a raw shot clip that someone's just putting up on their Instagram story. And it's gone to that point of it's content that is king, and it has been to a certain extent, but it's a very different style of content now. And I know that it's something that we've spoken about in terms of the struggle of the content flywheel, trying to constantly have something pumping out. Even from a podcast point of view, where you're pumping out, now you're doing 2 episodes a week, it's 2 to 3 hours of content there, and then pulling clips out of that. But it's still very difficult to kind of get enough out of that's engaging, that's not repetitive as well, still keeps people interested, and kind of keeps your platform growing as well, which you've been very open with over the last while with kind of revealing numbers and things like that. How do you find that whole piece of the content repurposing, finding angles? Again, I suppose it's inherently in the name of what you're doing. It's an experiment. It's just constantly trialing. Yeah, constantly,
because like I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm very open about like there's no real playbook here.
Yeah,
like there's the old media playbook, which elements of it are still correct, but it's a content game, and the content game, you've outlined it perfectly there. It's difficult, inherently difficult, especially when you're kind of on the smaller end. The Diary of CEO, Joe Rogan, they make it look very effortless because Steve Bartlett has a team of 30 working on it. You know what I mean? And he's able to do all those things. But you made a very interesting point there. Marketing and advertising used to be like big budget, used to be slick, whereas now it's big budgets trying to look low budget.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. So I believe we're at a huge tipping point in work, in business, in life. I think post-COVID, there's going to be pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think that the world has just fundamentally shifted, not necessarily as a result of COVID, but as a result of what it led to.
Yeah,
hybrid work, displacement of people in terms of like people are now working across the world. You now have access to global talent. People now think differently about if they're hiring. They're like, well, maybe I won't hire in Dundalk. Maybe I'll hire a developer in Argentina, but it'll work through Dundalk. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's fundamentally different. How I think about content is every season I sit down and review everything. I look at every single element of it and see, right, how can that be better? What could I do that's better? And podcasts, we have just had a conversation upstairs about it. Like, I think there's a shift coming in podcasts. I think podcasts are still super early. Yeah, I think this is version 1. What we are doing and what I've done for the last 5 years is version 1. And now we're starting to move into version 2, whereby people are consuming it everywhere. It's like TikTok clips, Instagram reels. It's not like you can only listen to the audio.
1 hour on Spotify.
Yeah. Well, when I started, right, it was audio only. And it was great because it was so easy. You just sit down with someone on a mic, there's no cameras, you could do it anywhere, super easy. But it was also super hard to grow because it was like literally I was growing subscriber by subscriber by subscriber, like literally often one a day. Like the line was just like that for so long, going slowly up because podcasts are really not discoverable in audio only.
Yeah.
I've chatted to a lot of UK creators over the last kind of 6 months trying to figure out where to go and what's next. And I spoke to a few agencies and they were like, oh, we wouldn't talk to you if you had an idea that it was audio only. Yeah. They're like,
I was going to say every podcast needs video now. Like that's something we said from the start was we have to video these.
Everything changed. Yeah. Everything has changed. Everything has changed.
Purely because you need those clips for social media. That's the only way to grow. So
So
you're not going to put an audio clip up, so yeah, you need
like
that kind of
I get like messages from people, and I ask every single person. People message me, I ask every single one, how'd you find the podcast? And generally, someone sent it to me.
Yeah.
You're like, oh no, the marketing isn't working.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, TikTok,
Yeah.
Instagram. I had a guy come up to me at a conference a few weeks ago. He goes, oh man, it's so cool to meet you. My ego was like out to there. He's like, so cool to meet you. Biggest fan of the pod. Da, 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 da. And I was like, oh, what's your favorite episode? He goes, oh no, like just TikTok. I was like, that's mad.
Doesn't listen to the full episodes.
No. He's like, I watch every single TikTok clip. That's mad. But now I've kind of re-broken apart my strategy just to base it on find people where they are. Don't just like do what you do and think that that's good enough to draw people. Again, push pull. Which am I doing? So now I'm trying to pull people from all different elements. I'm trying to pull people from TikTok, from Insta, from YouTube, from LinkedIn, from
It's
X.
reducing the friction of that person getting kind of invested in your content or in your podcast. Like, I know there's so much content. We're speaking as well about how you've gone to 2 episodes a week now, and you're not really seeing the impact of it in terms of growth. Yeah. Because there's just so much content to consume online that it is inherently so difficult that if you have 2 hours of content a week, but someone can watch 5 or 6 TikTok clips and get the main learnings out of that, it is going to be way more beneficial for them to just do it that way rather than consuming the full episodes.
And I'm not precious. I literally have hired a new editor yesterday, and we're having a chat, and I said to him, I'm not precious about this. I said, the only thing I'm precious about is success. I said, I don't care how we get there. I said, I'm not precious about the content. I'm not precious about TikTok or Instagram, the style. I was like, we've brand colors, black, red, white, Man United colors. I was like, that's it. They're not going to change.
Is that what it is? That's where it came from.
There you go.
Wow.
There's a unique reveal, right? That's where it comes from, right? Because that's why I really loved walking around your office here, because it has you everywhere. And I mean that in a good way. Is in like has traces of you and the team everywhere. You know, the computer on the wall, the broken computer, because that's part of your journey. So it's just, there's certain things within the pod that are kind of laced within it, the experimental side of things. That I believe that to my core. Yeah. That is how all great businesses run. Tiny experiments run repeatedly until you find something that's working. They do more of that. But I said to myself, look, I'm bringing you in to make it better, not to do what I've been doing. I said, what got me here won't get me there. Yeah. So the goal is, make the #1 business podcast in the world, top 10 by X time. That's the goal. I said, every medium of success matters, as in TikTok, Instagram, all that matters. I was like, but it's the overall success that matters to me. So I'm not precious about where people consume it. I don't care if you listen to every single clip on TikTok and never listen to the audio. As long as I'm reaching you somewhere, that's all that matters. It's
channel agnostic. Like, even growth on TikTok will pull a certain percentage through to, say, the core podcast, if it's the full audio episode or the full video episode on YouTube or whatever. So it doesn't matter. You're still growing. You're still, like, it's at a stage now where every business has to be multi-platform in terms of digital. So where you're growing, what platform you're growing on, it doesn't matter. It's still the core kind of, people use different platforms. Like, I won't touch TikTok. If I touch TikTok, I will lose my whole day. I'll go on, I'll post, and I'll leave, and that's it. And then maybe I might spend a little bit more time on some of the other platforms, but I'm still consuming certain people's content on each platform, but I'm not necessarily consuming content from the same person on multiple platforms. Let's say I'm kind of specific about, let's say, well, I'm following this person on Instagram, but I don't really like what they're doing on TikTok and whatever. So it's, being channel agnostic, that some people are going to prefer watching on certain platforms. So just spread yourself everywhere. It's pure visibility. It's getting in front of as many eyeballs as possible in as many formats as possible. Yeah.
And what it is for me is long-term play.
Yeah.
I'm taking a very, very, very long-term play on this. This is not like a 2-year thing. I'm in at 5 years now.
Yeah.
And I really feel, I said this in a post on LinkedIn the other day, I really only feel it's only getting going in the last 6 months. Just various things, various learnings. Like, probably took me longer than it should have, but
I think everyone says that, don't they?
It is, right? Yeah. If I know, I know now, blah, blah. But I probably should have stepped on the accelerator a little bit quicker. Didn't do that for various reasons. I was kind of spreading my focus across too many different things. So it's a very long-term play for me. This will be probably a 20-30 year project.
Yeah. That's the way to kind of look at it as well. Like, if you think about what you said there earlier about at the start of the podcast, you're growing individual subscriber by individual subscriber. You're looking at the number going up by 1 every month maybe or whatever, but in the back of your head you're going, yeah, well, this is a long-term play. This isn't something that I'm trying to grow in 6 months and exit type thing.
Yeah, you have to zoom out, right?
Yeah.
And that's very hard because you're ambitious and you're like, oh, I'm at a year now and I've got like 500 people watching. So hard. And that's where everyone gives up. Like podcasts are so easy to start, so hard to continue.
What's that stat? Is it something like,
oh, it's wild.
Is it after 20 episodes you're in the top 1% or something like that?
Yeah, if you go past 20, I think it's something like 90% quit after episode 5, I think. And then I think the rest, there's like a 3% left after 20 episodes, I think.
Yeah.
So if you do that, you're in the top couple of percentage points in the world, which is wild.
Honestly, Richie, that's the only thing I want to do with this podcast is get over 20 episodes.
There you go.
Once we do that, then I'm happy.
It's funny because a lot of people reach out to me and go, oh, can I meet you to talk about starting a podcast? And I used to go, yeah, of course. And then I stopped because like people were like, I'd be like, okay, what's your plan? Oh, well, I'm going to do like 5 episodes. I'm like, why? Why 5 episodes?
What are you going to gain out of that? Yeah.
But I don't mind if it's just like, I want to record my 5 members of my family to, for our family tree. That's cool. But it's like, I had a guy reach out to me and he was like, oh, I want to start a podcast. And I met him and he was like, oh, I just want to do 5 episodes. I was like, okay, why 5? He's like, I just we'll do 5 and see how it goes. And I was like, okay, and who you want to talk to? Interesting people. And that was the day I stopped meeting people to tell them how to start a podcast. Because like, the tools are all there. I did a couple of episodes on it going, here's how, if you want to start a podcast, here's how you're going to start a podcast. It's not starting podcast. It's not about starting a podcast. It's about, can you sustain it? Like, and every single episode I do, I'm like, another brick in the wall. So I'm now one podcast ahead of the next person coming behind me.
Yeah.
Or the person who's like, oh, I'll just start a business podcast. Since I've started, so many people have started podcasts, but then they're gone in 5 episodes, which is good and bad. I think
people underestimate the work that's involved in it. Like, not just podcasts, any business inherently. I think people feel like that thing of, I'm going to have coffee with this guy and talk to him about this business idea I have, and then I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, instead of just going, I'm going to put something on the market, see if it sells, and if it doesn't, move on to the next thing. They feel like they're acting on, they're starting a business once it's in their head, instead of actually physically acting on it. And
cheap dopamine.
Yeah.
Cheap dopamine. We're surrounded by cheap dopamine. And I've been thinking about this a lot in the last 6 months. The last kind of 18 months have kind of like been my experiment for myself, has been my focus. How to protect my focus, how to work on my focus, how to like use that as a superpower. Because I think focus is going to become a superpower in the next couple of years because people are so distracted. Yeah. I find it myself. I got to the stage where I was just distracted all the time. I couldn't focus on anything for longer than 10 minutes. And it's a lot of it's cheap dopamine from social media. Or the world. Like, we're surrounded by everything on demand now. Everything is like whatever you want, whenever you want, which is unreal. Like, we live in the best time in the world. Like, we are at, like, everything's at your fingertips. Knowledge, products, whatever you need. Amazon will have it here tomorrow. It's a wild time to live. Like, I've got a personal health tracking device on my wrist. That's mental. Yeah. Like, if you said that to me 15 years ago, I'd be like, oh my God. Like, professional athletes don't have them. Do you know, that kind of way? We live in a mad time. But the flip side of that is, people's expectations are a bit skewed in terms of doing the graft, putting in the work, because it's like if we're approaching 1 million downloads now in literally a few weeks, right? Which sounds impressive.
Congratulations ahead of time, by the way.
Thank you very much. Preemptive. But that sounds like a lot until it isn't, because people are like, oh yeah, sure, so-and-so got 1 million downloads on TikTok yesterday. Yeah. You're not comparing like with like, but also you kind of go, oh yeah, they did. Just for like it'll be at a stage though where you hit 10 million downloads and 1 million will look like nothing. Like, I'm sure you look now at when you hit 100,000 downloads and think, exactly,
Jesus, I was so naive back then even.
Yeah, and it is, but it's how do we not lose track of that grit of just doing hard things? Yeah, that's what I think about all the time. It's like, how do I do hard things, like the High Rocks thing? Yeah, that's really hard, and only a certain percentage of people do it. And that's why I like it, because it's like the MMA fight, the Women to Warrior thing, or Alta, whatever it's called now. That was really hard, and I like doing it because it was really hard. So I'm trying to pick things that are very hard to do to kind of train that muscle of like avoiding that cheap dopamine and falling into those traps of like comparison.
It's getting your body used to uncomfortable situations, uncomfortable surroundings, uncomfortable positions. I think people they'll revert back to, I'd rather just scroll on TikTok and watch business clips to like pretend that I'm educating myself. So you mentioned High Rocks and Whim to Warrior there. And inherently what we're wanted to do with this podcast is to speak to people who use physical activity like we do on a daily almost basis now as a means of creative expression, mental clarity, mental clearance, maybe let's call it. You've tried a lot of different things. You've done a lot of different things from a kind of physical standpoint. What is it about training? Is it that, like we were talking about, the uncomfortable piece? Is it just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations? Where do you find the main benefits from, say, physical activity?
Mentally.
Yeah.
100% it's for mental. It's not 100% because obviously you're getting healthier.
There's a physical.
So it's better, right? Okay. But for me, and do you know what? It's really interesting. It's only in the last kind of, I suppose, 12 months that I've kind of gone, it's okay to carve that time out and say, yes, it's for my mental health, as opposed to like, I just like going to the gym. I feel better after the gym. And I always used to say that, and I inherently knew that, but it's huge. It's just from my mental health. Like it's I love the gym. I love football. I love anything to do with activity. I love all sport. Just that feeling, I haven't done it. And that feeling of kind of like got that early victory. I like training out early in the day. I like training really first thing. If I can get the training first thing done, the day is kind of won, which sounds weird, right? But like I've set myself up in a zone for that day. And people take the piss out of people who like go to sauna and sea swim and run and do all that kind of stuff. That's because they're afraid. They'd rather do the easy thing and like not do that. Oh, I've got kids, or I've got this, or I've got that. You're really been inherently selfish. You're not looking after yourself, I believe, because I had a daughter 16 months ago, and not to do that whole thing of like it changes it, and it, as cringe as it sounds, it does, because I look at myself through her eyes now of going, well, why would I not look after myself? And I find that really interesting. And I hate when people say, oh, I've got kids now, I can't do this and I can't do that. I'm like, well, you're just robbing them from the future. Yeah. So when I think of it, my health now, it's like my health is for her as well, in terms of every like gym session I do is adding on like weeks and years to my life at the end, whereby people are robbing that from their kids now. Oh, I got to put my kids first.
It should be more of a reason to.
Yeah, you're actually not. You're putting yourself first.
Yeah.
You're letting laziness win by just saying, oh, I don't have time, blah, blah, blah. So I exercise from my mental health, from my mental clarity. If I can get like 5 to 6 sessions in a week, I just feel different fundamentally in my head. It rebalances myself. And I've gone on a whole kind of journey since COVID with my mental health and mental fitness. I think of it more as a preventative now, in terms of I know the things that make me feel good. Fitness is at the core of that.
Yeah, like I know I've played every sport under the sun. I've always been active, but I'm at a stage now, I'm at a stage now where I've so much going on just with life and business and everything, that a lot of the time I probably don't make it the priority that it should be, to the point of, oh, well, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then suddenly I'm deep into work, and it gets to 9 o'clock at night and I go, well, I probably could have been more efficient with my day here and got an hour in at lunchtime or whatever, or just got up half an hour earlier and done that, instead of hitting, not that I hit the snooze button, I would get up and do something. I do get up early, but it's getting up early and actually getting that out of the way and then setting yourself up for the rest of the day. I think that a lot of people kind of get caught up in just, it's not a priority, and where it should be as much of a priority as making money in your business.
Has to be.
Yeah.
And I've learned this through the podcast. This isn't like, oh my God, I've had a great revelation. This is all coming from the podcast. This is all coming from the learnings of these hundreds of people that I've chatted to. Yeah. Because I've taken, and often, do you know what it is? It's not the great things they teach you. It's I really don't like that. I really don't like where they've gone with this. I don't want to be there. Like, I don't want to be that person who like builds this business to 60 and then it's just miserable. Yeah. Poor health, poor relationships. I was at this dinner and it was one of the big eye openers of my life. Wasn't that long ago. And it was all very seasoned founders. As a podcast host, you do get invited to do cool stuff, right? This one big benefit is that like you develop a profile, and like that is part of my strategy, is to develop a profile around being the entrepreneur guy, the founder guy, the experimental guy, because you're almost like you're a curator for people. You know interesting people, and you bring interesting people together, and you do interesting things. That is important to me. And you do get interesting opportunities. So I'm invited to this private dinner, and around the table, I'll just be very careful not to name names here, or just to identify the event. It was very, very traditional. They were all very seasoned, very successful, in air quotes. If you're listening, it's doing the air quotes thing, successful on paper, right? If you read about them on the back of the Sunday Times, a lot of them would be on the back of the Sunday Times. Oh, so-and-so exited for 30 million. So-and-so is the chairman of this. So-and-so. It was that caliber of people, right? I was definitely the lowest rung on the ladder, which is where you want to be, right? If you're not the stupidest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I was excited and went to it. And within a few minutes, I was like, oh no, these are not my people. Yeah. They're not my tribe. They do not share any of my values. And I believe there's a huge shift in the founder mentality. Like, that's why I've kind of like brought in business, brain, and body into the podcast. Because that is how I want to live my life. Looking after my brain, number one, looking after my body, number two, looking after my business, number three. And it was around that table that, they were talking about the good old days. And like, I wasn't drinking. And your man beside me starts getting real irate about the fact I wasn't drinking. This guy has been chairman of one of the biggest public bodies in Ireland, right? Yeah. And he got mad irate. It's like, have a bit of crack with the lads, won't you? Stop in such a dry...
Very Irish mentality, yeah.
Wild, right? Yeah. I was like, look, doesn't matter to you. So I'm not drinking. It shouldn't make some impact to you at all. I was very calm about it initially. I was like, just not drinking. No big deal.
Some people are more fun when they're not drinking.
Right? And he couldn't let it go. And he calls over the waitress, and he's like, and I hate when people do this. It's so demeaning to people. Emma, come here. Emma, tell this lad here, have a drink and have a bit of dessert and lighten up a bit. She's like, oh God, made her feel awkward. Yeah. I didn't care, because I was like, I'm very comfortable with
It's a reflection on him, not on you. Yeah.
Right? And he goes, this guy won't even let me have dessert. I said, tell you what, you can have my dessert and your dessert, because I really don't care what you're doing. I care what I'm doing. Exactly. So it's all about like being confident in yourself and having are you living intentionally, or are you drifting? That's what I think about my life now. Are you being intentional about everything you do, or are you just drifting along with the crowd? Because it's very easy to drift along. Like, we're pack animals. Like, we're meant to like don't deviate from the herd, or you get picked off. But that's how I think about it. Are you being intentional about your fitness? You're being intentional about your life. You're being intentional about your family, about everything like that. That's a very long-winded answer to ask about
it's a nice kind of, what they call it, an ecosystem of like that business, body, and brain, like that cohesive kind of working on one benefits the other two inherently. So I like that methodology that you've kind of constructed there of, okay, well, if you're working on your business and you're doing well, that's going to kind of give you dopamine for your brain. Yeah. But if you're not working on your body, then that kind of physical aspect, then you're kind of inherently, you're going to have those, let's say I don't want to say mental health issues, but an easy phrase, let's call it that, where it's going to affect your brain, which then affects your business. So it all is cohesive, and it has
three pillars, right? 3 pillars going around like that.
Yeah.
Because it's you can have a healthy business to a point, but then if you're not having the other two, like I've chatted to founders that have exited for multiple millions, and they're miserable. And I always ask the same question of people who exit, going, how did it feel? Tell me what it felt like. Just meant to be fun, right?
Yeah.
You're in business to make a bit of money, have a bit of fun, and do cool things. And like, so many of them just go, felt like nothing. Felt like nothing. Just didn't feel anything. And the real honest people say, I was depressed. I was down because I'd lost my purpose.
Yeah. Like,
we think business is all about like making money and things like that. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. You have to be clear going, we're in business to make money, right? But a lot of it is purpose and journey and adventure. And what are you doing? Like, where are you on the road to? So that's kind of like a sneak peek as to like my next kind of season and next kind of ideas on what I'm going to ask people is like, what's the end goal?
Yeah.
Where is the end goal here? It shouldn't really be an end goal. Just spoiler alert, that's my answer.
Yeah.
It's to enjoy the journey. It's to build something you love doing every day. And that sounds kind of trite when you say that, but you have a choice, right? You have a choice in life. And I say this to my wife, and it drives her crazy. Every time something bad has happened to someone else or whatever, I'm like, that's a choice. They're choosing to put themselves in that negative situation repeatedly.
Yeah.
And like, we all do that, right? We all make choices that aren't good for us in the long term, but we keep making it because it's comfortable. It's the one we've always made.
Yeah. I think the one thing, talking about an end goal, the one thing that I've taken from discussions with you and people that we've spoke to over the last couple of years is the goal setting kind of aspect of it. I know you're massive on setting goals, and it was something that I kind of had been doing to a certain extent, but have really focused on over the last couple of years, is setting even 10-year goals, 5-year goals, 1-year goals, breaking it down into weekly goals and making sure that everything's aligned. But what I would have kind of fallen down on before is not adjusting those 3, 5 or 10-year goals based on what has changed over the last 6 months. And I think that might be something I would imagine that will come up when you speak to someone about the end goal, is that, well, 5 years ago, this is where I wanted to be. And now this has changed, that's adjusted. Obviously there's external factors in the last few years that have changed a lot of things for a lot of people, but it's changing those, or being willing to be fluid with those longer term goals, to say, well, in 40 years time, I just want to be, maybe I want to be retired on the beach with my feet up, or I want to have a 70-acre farm with a couple of grandkids running around me. Like, that can change as well. Like, that real end goal of where you want to be in retirement, when you want to retire, that can always kind of change and adjust, but not being too flexible with, or not being too rigid, being a bit more flexible with those goals.
That's the secret.
Yeah,
I think.
Exactly.
Like, 'cause I love setting goals because it forces me to think. Like, I love doing podcasts like this with you because it forces me to think, what am I saying? Do I truly believe that, or am I just saying that because that's what people think you should say? But that's why I love setting goals, because I'm like, right, where do I want to go in 5 years? And very few people do it. And that's why I always do a big start of year kind of like, don't set resolutions, make plans, have systems.
Don't get me started on resolutions.
Right?
I've talked about that on this podcast before.
It's nonsense, right? It's streaming, and it's
a recipe for failure.
It is. And look, I've had a hard Christmas and I drank too much and I ate too much and blah 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 blah. New year, new me, hon. Right? That whole cliche, right? But if you have to have goals, you have to have like a plan, but you've put your finger right on it there. It's to be able to then tweak as you go, because a lot of people might set goals for 12 months. And you know what? A lot of people just never set goals. They just go off randomly, just hit the road, start the business and hit the road.
And it works out for some people, but
sometimes
it's pure potluck, I think, when it does work out.
It's the intentionality versus drifting. Which are you doing? Are you being intentional? And some people, I met a guy the other day, he goes, you're very he was going to say intense, but he was like very driven. And I was like, do you know what it is? It's that we're all inherently lazy. Yeah. We're all inherently kind of like, you had a hard day yesterday, Gary. Take it easy today. Yeah.
That's be good to yourself.
It's in my head all the time, right? So I go the other way to try counteract that. And I've leaned into this way more over the last kind of couple of years because I want to have systems. My brain is very busy, very active. And I find if I don't have systems, it can lead to overthink, it can lead to procrastination, it can lead down this rabbit hole of like, when you can do anything, you end up doing nothing. Yeah. So I try to narrow down the focus. That's why at the start of the year, I'll have big, broad, kind of like looking at the horizon going, right, there's the ocean, where do we want to sail to? And then I'll close it down a little bit. And I was like, okay, you can only make it to this port by this time. Okay, you can only make it to here in this time. And slowly, the window closes. And then you've kind of like got a path and a mission for like the quarter and then the week and the day. I find that's just what works for me. There's different systems for everybody. That's the one thing I've learned from doing the pod. Everyone's built different. You shouldn't apply what you hear from me or you and go, I'll just do that. You have to go, what way does my brain work?
Do you have a kind of an approach of, there's that, is it a saying, I don't know, of everyone overestimates what they can do in a day and underestimates what they can do in a year or whatever time frame you want to put on it. Do you have a means or a method of, say, when you're setting out yearly goals or monthly goals or whatever, to say, okay, well, this is actually realistically achievable? Because there's that SMART acronym for goals, specific, measurable, whatever. To have that, the or is the realistic aspect of it. Of setting a goal for a year's time and going, is this actually realistic? For example, 46 weeks ago, I started posting weekly videos on YouTube. And in my head, I said, by week 52, I'm going to have 5,000 subscribers. And I think I might have said this to you at the time, and you're like, why don't you just say 10? I was like, right, 10,000. And I'm at like 107. But like, I also have the thinking of, well, if I aim for 10,000, and I hit 5, great. But if I aim for 5,000 and I hit 4, like, you aim higher and you'll hit higher. But do you have like a structure around that in terms of judging what is realistic in terms of when you're putting your goals together?
No.
Or, yeah,
it's the hardest part.
It's just winging it. Yeah,
it's the hardest part, and it's a mixture, and it's probably the bit I take the longest on, because I struggle with this, because I'm like, you have to push really hard, and I put a lot of my stuff out there. I put a lot of my goals out there. I put a lot of my stuff kind of out there for people to look at, to kind of hold myself accountable. It's also good content, a bit of both, right?
Yeah.
It gets people's attention, because you can't be boring, right? I've probably fallen into the trap of just being a bit too safe. I talked earlier about like probably grew a little bit slow. That's because it probably was a bit too safe. I'm kind of coming out of that zone now, as I've kind of built up my own self-confidence again. I've kind of realized you can have a bit of fun with it. You can push the boundaries a little bit. Don't be so careful about everything.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part of any goal setting, is to try find the point whereby it's not ridiculous that you're like, oh, I'm gonna have 10 million euro at the end of the year. What I try do now is I try work backwards. So if I go, okay, if I want 10 million subscribers, what would that mean every month? If I was going to have 10 million subscribers, how many subscribers would need to be adding on every month? You're like, Jesus, you're like 1.5 million a month. How many are you doing now? 10,000. You're like, oh,
yeah,
probably somewhere in the middle there. But I do believe you have to. So what I do is I work back and then go, oh, it might be completely achievable. And then I work backwards and go, okay, maybe if I picked somewhere in the middle there, what would that look like per month? That's probably beyond my realm of comfort. So I have A goals and B goals. A goal is like, holy shit, we met it, baby. We're here. We've arrived.
You'll have a drink then if you hit an A goal.
B goals, no. B goal is like, yeah, you done really well.
Yeah.
You done really, really well. That's the A goal is like, whoa, like we'd have to have an eclipse every day for the year for it to happen. Whereas the B goal is like you worked your arse off and you really pushed it. So and this is something I'm kind of working on at the minute.
That's a nice structure that I've never really thought about it that way. I've kind of been set a goal, not an A goal, just a goal.
And this is only something I'm going to working on all the time now. Kind of going have to. I think I took it off Sahil Bloom, really good creator. And I think he calls it something else, but that's how I kind of think about it in terms of have your real, like people call it a stretch goal and a realistic goal. So that's how I kind of think about it, because it's hard to know a lot of, and you put your finger on it there in terms of like stuff changes all the time. Life gets in the way, right? I was having this chat with someone. We were doing the Shane Craddock course. You know Shane.
Yeah.
We were doing that on Tuesday, and one person was just talking about life. Life gets in the way. That had bereavement, and I think that's the thing, is to develop systems. That's why I develop systems all the time, so that a trip doesn't become a fall.
Yeah.
So that one bad day doesn't become a bad week, which doesn't become a bad month. And they're the things that I try to build now, that like I just have systems whereby I just know what I should be doing week to week, day to day.
It gives you a reset point if something does happen. Yeah.
So you just pick up tomorrow and you do your 3 things. Every day I do 3 things. And you just pick up tomorrow and you do your 3 things that, again, you just break out the Notion doc and go, what's the yearly goal? Okay. Because you can get lost. You can get lost very easy.
Yeah, something off the back of that, and kind of related to different topics that we've been speaking about there, is something that I've learned from listening to a lot of your podcasts over the last 4 or 5 years, is that, and I would have kind of had a brief thought about this in the back of my head anyway, but it's kind of been solidified by listening to a lot of people that you've spoken to, is that no one knows what they're doing. Absolutely nobody has it figured out. There's no secret sauce that you're missing. And it's something that I probably would have been guilty of in terms of starting the businesses initially and maybe putting it off a little bit. And it even could be like the physical aspect of, well, I don't feel comfortable going to the gym or something like that. That there's no secret bullet. Is that the word? Silver bullet?
Yeah, silver bullet,
it's just, you have to do it and figure it out along the way. That if you're in a room that you feel, and imposter syndrome is something, and I'll get on to a little bit about that in a second. I think you know where I'm going with that. But imposter syndrome, let's call it that, is something that I struggled with for a long time, of being in certain rooms, looking around going, I do not fit in here. Well, there's certain rooms that maybe you don't fit into anyway, but there's certain rooms that you feel like you don't fit into, but that is, it is the right room to be in. You should be there, but you don't feel like you're at a level because you feel like the people in that room have something that you don't have, which is inherently not true. Everyone is base level human being, and some people might have achieved other more than you. That could be subjective as well, but it's the case of, well, they haven't got something I don't have or that I can't get. It's just it's about working towards that. And last year, something really impactful that I experienced was you speaking to Stephen Bartlett, and he spoke about this imposter syndrome and putting the word syndrome against something and making it seem like an illness almost. And I actually cried when I left that. When I sat in the car, I'm going to cry again. It really hit me emotionally, the way he structured his answer about how if you don't have that feeling, you're doing something wrong, that you're not in the right rooms, you're not talking to the right people, you're not doing the right things. So that feeling of what people would label as imposter syndrome is something that you should be striving to have. That is a feeling of growth, and back to what we were saying earlier about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. Don't know where I was going with that thought. I kind of started to ramble there, but I think that aspect of just putting yourself in situations and realizing that everyone who you think is ahead of you had to do the same thing and had to work it out as they went along. And yeah, the way I phrase it in my head is everybody's winging it.
It's beautiful and it's terrifying.
Exactly.
In equal measures, because, and it's a really important point about imposter syndrome, because every single one of us has it. That was one of the most unique answers I've ever got to a question, was from him. Mm-hmm. It was really, really different, because people usually go, oh yeah, I struggle from myself. Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. We all do, right? It's realistic. Like it's human psychology. Mm-hmm. The more I study business and study founders and study what's going on, business is more psychology than business. Mm-hmm. It's all managing your own psychology, number one. That's what I focus on 80% of the time, is managing my own psychology, not reacting to other people. And it's managing your customer psychology, number two. Mm-hmm. But it's a brilliant thing, like, and you really explained it very well there. If you're not feeling that, that's a problem. Because then we talked about earlier, we're having a coffee. There's only two modes. You're growing or you're dying. Mm-hmm. There's only two. There's no like in the middle. There's no like stasis where you're just staying put. Mm-hmm. If you're doing that and you feel like you're there, the bad news is you're going the other way. You're going way backwards. And it was a really good answer I found, that stop labeling yourself, stop giving yourself these issues, and how self-talk is huge. Shane Craddock taught me that, and I think yourself as well. Yeah. I never even knew I had like an internal voice. I just thought that was my brain running all the time, playing all this stuff, going, oh, don't go there, that's not going to be any good. Whereas now I'm confident enough in myself. I think some of this comes with experience as well. Mm-hmm. I've put myself in so many uncomfortable positions. Mm-hmm. I had this chat with myself the other day going, why do you do this to yourself?
I say that to myself every day.
I can't even remember what I was doing, but I was doing something and I was like, oh, this is really hard and this is really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I was like, why do you keep finding yourself in these positions?
Why do you keep saying yes to these things?
I was just like, there's easier ways to make a few quid. But I was just like, because I'm inherently an introvert. I like my own company. I like doing this with you. But if I'm in a group of 10 people, I probably won't say a word. Yeah. And I used to really get stressed out and anxious about that. And I'd keep putting myself in those positions, but I would like get nothing from it. But I would be I'd be beating up on myself afterwards going, you don't have anything interesting to say. You're in the wrong room. What were you doing there? You wasted your time, blah, blah, blah. And instead now I just don't do that. Mm-hmm. I picked my zone of genius. That sounds really self-conceited. No, we're going to go with it. Doesn't matter. I picked the zone where I'm comfortable and go, I love doing this with you. This gives me so much energy. I could do this all day, which if we sat here for 6 hours, I'd leave at 6 hours and still have so much energy. If we're in a group room now for like 6 hours, I would be so drained at the end of it. I just wouldn't be able to. Again, it comes back to know what you're really good at. Know what you're really confident in, what makes you feel good. Pushes you. This is not easy. It's not easy to sit down with you and do this, but it's the zone whereby you feel you're right on the edge. You're feeling that edge, that zone of discomfort, but you're doing it anyway. Yeah.
I actually just thought, as you were talking there, about, we used to have morning group meetings once a month or every couple of months, whatever it was, off the back of your podcast and people that were in that community. And they were massive for me. I don't know if I mentioned this at the start of the podcast, but that was one of the biggest things that I've gotten from getting to know you and getting to know people in the community, was those morning meetings. And I don't know if you noticed, but the first couple of those meetings, I basically said nothing. Like, we went around the room and everyone kind of spoke about, we kind of did it in structure, and people spoke about what was going on and what challenges they had, etc. And I probably wouldn't have said a whole pile when I was speaking, but when other people were speaking, I completely shut off because I felt like I didn't have anything to contribute. I felt like I had that imposter syndrome in that room, and that went on for a number of months until something switched in my brain, and then I became more comfortable in that room, and then that extended to even meetings with clients where I felt like, oh, maybe a year before that, if I had sat in a room with that client, I would have thought, I am absolutely not the person qualified to be speaking to this person about that topic. Whereas it gave me that realization of, the everyone's winging it type thing, putting me in that uncomfortable situation. But again, I still had to get up at 5:30 in the morning, get a train to Dublin to sit with you guys and do that. So it was putting myself out there to do that as well. But yeah, that has made a massive impact on me as well.
That's really cool to hear, because there's stuff you don't really hear. You do the meetings, you're like, oh yeah, this is good.
People don't want to admit it.
But people, but it's interesting. Like, and I believe anything, you need friction. If you're really going to grow, you need that friction. You need that challenge. You need that kind of like, oh, I was up at 5:30 in the morning. I think actually you need that to grow. Things are easy. It goes back to the cheap dopamine thing. You just like sit on a Zoom call and like, oh, it was great, lads, thanks. Log off. Yeah. Don't think about it again until next week, next month. Yeah. You know, I think you need that element of friction, because life is so streamlined now and life's so easy. I think you need, and that weeds out. That's why they're on so early as well. I was like, I want people who are absolutely killers, who want to get up that early, and it weeds out people who are just kind of half into it. Yeah,
instead of going, let's do it at 11 o'clock. So we're going to finish with some quick fire questions.
Oh, what a good idea, Chris.
I wonder where we got this from.
Interesting side note, this is the bit people struggle with the most when we're doing pods.
Oh, you're putting yourself under pressure now.
Yeah.
I should have just give you the same questions that you ask everyone else and see how you cope with them.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. I actually thought about that last day. I was like, I really better come up with some cool, sexy answers, because sometimes people give me the answers they should say. Yeah. I'm like, just tell me, lump it all on Bitcoin. Give me something for TikTok.
They probably give you the real answer after you stop recording. You're like, why didn't you just say that? I could have clipped it.
Yeah. It often happens. You could get a whole other pod from when you hit stop. Get a whole other pod for 20 minutes, because people have like a... Depends on the person. Some people are totally open.
I hate that on a podcast when someone says, "Oh, I'll tell you the name after." I'll tell you
after. Yeah.
Just tell me.
Unless we're going to get in legal trouble. Someone was on the pod the other day and they were like, "And so and so did this." I'm like, "Can we say that?" And they were like, "Oh, it's been in the papers. Don't worry." And I was like, "I guess we'll find out."
I had coffee with a guy yesterday, and he was telling me about someone who he had been speaking to, and this guy ultra successful and has like. Actually has a couple of hundred businesses. Stupid level of success. Let's put success in italics or whatever there. But he said something, or he was dealing with some situation, and the guy said to him, "Would you not get sued for that?" Just laughed and said, "I have people that deal with that." Thought that was one of the best
answers. That's a very Bobby Axelrod answer. Oh, exactly. I love Billions. It's one of my favorite shows of all times. I've watched it, I think, 4 times. 3.
Really? Yeah,
I had a young baby for months there. I would just be up at like 3 a.m.
It's a great show.
Billions on. I just watched it back to front, especially in COVID. Watched it back to front a couple of
times.
That
was my COVID. Yeah, every day I got up and watched an episode and went about my day.
Be more like
went
Bobby.
About my day around the house.
A sound Bobby. Bobby would have been more ethics.
Yeah, any ethics. Right, let's go through these. Number 1, favorite holiday destination.
Marbella.
Okay, you going back?
Going back.
Nice.
Yeah, very easy answer there.
Right, they'll get harder.
I'll preface that with New York would be the second one. We went there in our honeymoon. It's an amazing city.
Yeah, big fan of New York as well. Favorite gym exercise, or favorite exercise in general?
That's a random one. Favorite gym exercise. There has to be one, right? Let me just see.
Let's say favorite